Mr. Speaker and colleagues, as we pause on the second day of February to educate the public as much as possible about the stony road that we have trod in America as African Americans, it is an opportunity for all of us, America and my colleagues, to understand in terms of the mountains that we have had to climb and the valleys that we've been in. And that this is not necessarily about a comfort level. I constantly say in talks that I have, it's not about shame or pain, but it is about understanding of America. African Americans' history has not always been on someone's radar, and generations of individuals will surely miss out on opportunities to live in a society in which the best of the world could be given to them, and the best of the world they will embrace, unless we educate, unless we teach, unless we model certain things that have happened over the years. Black history, truthfully, is elevated in February, but every day, 365 days a year, 12 months a year, is Black history. And it's important, especially important now, as we are living in the vestiges of that history, Americans' history. And I think any of us that have an opportunity to share would be remiss and it'd be a derelict of our duties if we fail to help others understand America's history. So the subject matter that I want to explore and share with you today and help all of us to better understand is certainly a current event, a history that's riddled with holes and untruth. And so I want to bring to you and talk today about, and on yesterday, first of all, my colleague, Delegate Bagby, talked about good, the bad, and the ugly. It has been good, lots of good, but it's also been plenty of bad and ugly. And so as we celebrate, as we commemorate and talk about African American history, I want to be clear that the reason I'm going to talk about this particular issue is because I want America better than the America that I was born into. I want a better America for my 1-, 4-, and 9-year-old granddaughters, for your children, your grandkids, and your great-grandkids. And the only way we can get there, Mr. Speaker, is tell the truth. I want to talk about the history of policing and how we got to this place. And so the question is, did you know that the history of policing can be traced back to the days of slavery in colonial America? In the South, where slavery was the central to the economy, they were called slave patrols. And they were responsible for capturing runaway slaves and returning them to their master. It was the first unofficial policing in America. Did you know, considering how slavery itself was one of the most egregious treatment of mankind in human history, slave patrols were especially cruel in the way they captured runaway slaves and punished them for their daring escape and their desire for freedom. Did you know that slave rebellions were a constant threat to the economic status quo of the southern plantation owners, and slave patrols ensured that these owners were able to intimidate and punish any insurgencies or revolt? Did you know, Mr. Speaker, in return, these wealthy plantation owners protected the interests of the slave catchers? And did you know, as a result of this practice created a social hierarchy between the wealthy landowners at the top, the slave patrols separating the wealthy from the poor, and the slaves who were at the bottom of the hierarchy? Once again, the beginning of policing in America. And unfortunately, we are still dealing with the remnants of how that past intersects with our present. Once again, we are a nation traumatized by senseless and barbaric murder and traumatic beating of an African American, a human being, who received a death sentence as a result of a traffic stop. We find ourselves at a place, and many of us are asking questions that we have no answer to. On yesterday, Tyree Nichols was eulogized. And I dare say that any compassionate person, any person that has a heart, any person that cares at all, witnessed his mother on yesterday at that funeral, will find themselves in deep grief and pain. We find ourselves at a moment of pause once again in America. And if we have not stopped to try to figure this out, and why we are so baffled and why we are so taken back to what happens, it is clear for us to understand history and understand that history matters. And because history matters, the only way that we'll know what's going on in the present is to understand the past. The carryover of policing practices still exist in so many places in our society. I had an opportunity to speak with police officers and the police chief since the death of Tyree Nichols. What was told to me, and this was a sad commentary because there are so many wonderful police officers, so many police departments that care and work very hard to help their communities to be the very best. But what was told to me, that it is clearly a culture that continues to manifest itself in a negative light. One police officer said to me, and I quote, "No training or any kind of teaching could have we could have expected anything different than what those police officers did." What they said to me was, it probably had been done before. That same kind of force, they just didn't get caught. These systems precede us. However, the legacy lives on. So I do not come to this body today, and I want to be clear, because of my own righteousness. I come because of my righteous indignation. This is our country. And what we do constantly cultivate the good, the bad, or the ugly. There is a culture. It's a culture, Mr. Speaker, of the haves and have-nots. We have created cultures that look at the us's versus the those. We have nurtured cultures of superiority versus inferiority, dominance as a way of distinguishing my elevation over another. We have created and nurtured a culture that has left generations of people that were brought to this land, a land that has not yet fully cultivated or been completely fertilized toward inclusiveness. The sad reality is that there have been many attempts made toward moving us to another place in this country. But incidents and rhetoric and other stubborn systems have always slowed down the progress and the advancement. Mr. Speaker, this thing has bothered me to my core when I look at what has happened. Because I'm one, along with I know many others who are out in the community working with the police departments. And what has happened, they have been set back. They've taken 5 steps forward and 10 steps backwards as a result of this. We must change things. We must change the layers of soil in this nation that has been entrenched by superiority, dominance, and arrogance, hate, racism, and contention that's been established in America. So many continue to be resistant to the transformation that we need. But, Mr. Speaker, we need it. And sometimes I dare say that our moral compass are on life support. How do you look away? How do we turn away? How do we dismiss some of the things that have happened? Mr. Speaker, I am traumatized. Families are traumatized. Community are traumatized. Black, white, Asian, young, old, rich, and poor. We've all experienced something as a result of what we have seen on that video. We have experienced these same forms of injustice so much that, Mr. Speaker, I'm not surprised, just traumatized. How does a simple traffic stop or a minor traffic infraction allegedly committed by a young black man or woman turn into a brutal execution? It is because of the culture. And the stage has been rotating over and over again, excessive, shocking attack on humanity, particularly when it encounters black people and brown people. The mindset to inflict pain and suffering. Mr. Speaker, I'm hoping that all of us will take an opportunity to say no more. It must stop, and we're going to be a part of making sure that it stops. We cannot, and I will not, be silent. Many of us saw Tyree Nichols as our own brother, our son, our nephew, our uncle's grandson, and cousins. And again, it is a part of Americans' culture to dehumanize certain people. Finally, Mr. Speaker, we lost Tyree Nichols. A mother lost her son. A father lost his son. A 4-year-old lost his dad. And anybody that cares in America, whether you believe it or not, you lost a part of yourself. Not only was it a crime against him, it was a crime against humanity for all of the humanity that is in us. We also lost our trust in those we have worked diligently with and to restore trust. This was a colossal and toxic abuse of power, authority, and injustice toward humanity. And once again, we saw the reflection of a historical culture of inhumanity that has constantly plagued America and the black community. It is unacceptable. It was unacceptable in the past. It is unacceptable in the present. And we must make certain that it's unacceptable in the future. It has always been unacceptable, no matter what the color of the authority may be. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.